Welcome back, Trinidad and Tobago. Well, this morning we are honored to have with us community activist Pastor Clive Dutton, who is, of course, no stranger to us here on CTV. We're always happy to hear his input, his side of the story. And this morning we'll be talking about a number of things. Of course, we will be chatting a bit on the current media reports as it pertains to the TTPS and those recent developments, as well as a possible drug crisis in government secondary schools and a new initiative being launched in Trinidad and Tobago entitled SOS, Saving Our Society. Welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here. It has been some time, a few months.
Yes, I know you're always busy. So my first question to you, what are your thoughts? You were here listening to that interview that we just had with Commander Gavin Hero. What are your thoughts on the recent media reports that have been circulating as it pertains to the image now of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service?
Well, this is a reflection of where the society is going, The society is traveling at record-breaking speed in the direction of what I call spiritual rigor mortis. We are in a kind of psychological comatose position at many of our institutions. And that is what I have to say. The good book, and we have to refer to the good book in times of crisis, otherwise we repeat the same errors. It is righteousness that exalts a nation. To my mind, we're becoming psychologically wounded and spiritually bankrupt in our society. We have no respect for values. We have hardly any respect for institutions. We are losing confidence when a thing like this happens. And I want to say it very straight, coming on the heels of Commander Hero. When this happens, it serves to further undermine trust and confidence in our institutions that have to deal with law and order and justice. And you hear people saying yesterday on the road, well, who can you trust? I had a number of programs in the last 48 hours. We have the SOS in the Savannah. It's a program we have launched together with something called Life Hope Centers in what we call the ghetto, the disadvantaged areas with disadvantaged people. And you're hearing that a lot. Who can you trust? You know what I mean? So and I'm sure Commissioner Williams is doing his best to rebuild, the image of the service and everything else. And people have a way of trying to validate themselves by destroying the leader. But the fact is, unless the society turns to God and returns to authentic spiritual values, we are going to continue in what I call the collapsibility modality. That's where we are going, and we are in denial, and that is the problem. I have said on this station and many other media houses that the minute we want to change the society, and we have a common goal and a common vision, and we trust God for the ultimate destiny, we're going to conquer the problems of drugs and crime. But it takes an effort from all of us. No sense going into the blame game, and even blaming the technology and the social media for publishing pics and what have you there. That is used recklessly at times, but at times it provides useful information that sometimes has been covered up. So there's the proper use of the technology, especially social media, and there's the improper use of the technology. And it comes to the issue of how we guide our youth, how we value life, how we celebrate life. It relates to all of this.
You talk about returning to an authentic spiritual and moral values. Where does that start?
That has to start in the home. I mean, as I was telling some folks recently, we could blame anybody. This society loves scapegoating and blame shifting. And in times of crisis, certain voices emerge from the lattice work. But the point is, we have got to place the responsibility where it is supposed to be placed. Officer Derek Shabadi and the St. James Police Club, I mention him all the time. We had a tremendous program with the Child Protection Unit of the police force and the issue of abuse. We had teenagers and parents sitting down together. I was part of that process. And I told the parents, they cannot blame Officer Shabadi or anyone else when they refuse to fulfill their responsibility that has been divinely mandated by God himself. And therefore, we are second-level responders. But you have the issue of the home. And again, this crisis is a family crisis, You could twist it and tweak it and tweet it like Donald Trump, but this is a family crisis. What you're hearing, the allegations of infidelity, of lack of control, you have to think in terms of can the government invest more in a program with the EAP, a consistent employee assistance program for the police service, for the whole of national security, for the prison service? You know, you have to look at all of that. We have to establish, you know, if you have to re-engineer the society, you have to recalibrate your priority listing, you know. In other words, you have to invest where it matters most. And where it matters most is in the human capital. You have police under stress. They're under stress because you have a crime and violence thing that is escalating again out of control. We're talking about state of emergency again. And you have internal domestic issues. I mean, these are human beings. They face all the challenges of life. And there has to be not just a sympathy, but an empathy for what these officers go through. And when you have that internecine strife taking place within the force itself, it brings a question on a number of issues. And I am saying to the government and the opposition in this country, I'm dissatisfied with you, to be frank. The mere idea that we could have a service and have more than 10 times you're giving short-term stints and talking about an acting police officer, and you saw what the tragedy, the disaster, the cataclysmic scenario with this issue of the last appointment of a police commissioner and the conflict between the PSC and the PCA, the issue of the blame game. I mean, if things like what happened and this officer dying now, I was trying to wrap my mind around what kind of funeral it would be, what kind of emotions will fill there. And that is going to be a challenge for all the family members concerned. And I'm appealing to both the government and opposition, fix it. You can come together and fix this problem. We don't need an acting commissioner to be, given short-term stints. We need a full-time permanent commissioner of police, and you have the power in your hands to fix this. And when the history of this period is written, both of you may stand condemned. If that doesn't provoke you, that is not the catalyst for putting country before self, then nothing else. There'll be nothing else. That's why I'm appealing, not condemning, but appealing to both government and opposition to do what you have been placed there to do.
Now, you spoke about the priority being human capital. You spoke about a society where police officers are stressed. You mentioned a society also riddled with crime and violence. My question to you, what changes should take place in the school system to accommodate such?
I went to a secondary school in St. Madeleine at one time where the guidance officer had a vision. She was proactive. She had 90 kids who were placed there. And by the way, these children come from homes, they come from communities. I also went to Laumen Central Secondary where the officer there, the guidance officer, had a great networking strategy to reach a lot of young people, some of whom were in gangs and stuff, so that it has to start at the home. And then the church has to look at, also doing some re-engineering. And we have to talk to the public in terms of individual responsibility and accountability. If a society doesn't return to authentic values of spirituality, decency, morality, compassion, forgiveness, there's so much revenge and hatred in the society. And people are on a short fuse. They have a very low threshold of excitability. And therefore, you have to address all of these things. And I'm saying a return to values must mean a return to spirituality. The society wants morality without spirituality, without a vertical connection, without a connection with God. That's why we have all these alternative models, a rebirth of colonialism. So if America and Europe wants to go in the LGBTIQAEXYZ community, we want to do it too. We don't want to be called anachronistic or irrelevant. We want to be called postmodern and postmodern, and therefore we abandon that which should be the fundamental pillars of the society. And that is what saving the society is all about. That's why we're in the Queen's Park, Savannah, with director, evangelist Inskip Richards. And after him, we go into the Beetham and several areas. We have permanent institutions in some communities right now, 8 troubled societies called the Life Hope Centers throughout the Caribbean. It's the church's response. And I want to say that all of us must accept a certain kind of unprecedented individual responsibility for making a difference where we are. And I'm saying, in terms of priorities, let us invest a lot of resources in institutions like youth clubs, police youth clubs, sporting organizations. It can't just be sporting organizations. It must be sporting organizations at a level of control where the values of respect and decency are promoted, you know, a mile a second, if you please. We're faster than the speed of light. We need it right now. And that is very important. To my mind, we are not putting resources where we should put resources. I listen to all the youth club leaders. I listen to them cry out for more help in terms of personnel, because your problems, you know, exhaust the resources. And that is why in the next budget, I appeal to Mr. Imbert and to the government particularly, because you're in charge right now. You can't escape that responsibility to invest more in the young people. And I ask parents to invest more time in your young charges, because I could tell you, we talk about prestige schools, and we criticize the government secondary school, but I could tell you, I'm dealing with certain guys from prestige schools in this country, and one guy told me, he said, Pastor, we have about 100 young people smoking ganja, all right? Outside of the school, sometimes in the school. We have situations where you have scores of youth. I have spoken to social workers, and they will tell me, Pastor, we have guys right and you're pushing, and people are scared to deal with it. So that means your society is in crisis. And the first thing we have to do is come out of the cocoon of denial and place responsibility where it should be placed, and accept responsibility, all of us, when we build in this society.
So would you say that there is a drug crisis currently in our
Yes, there's a drug crisis, because if you could have young people 13 and 14 being what they call pushers in the school, all right, system, then you've got to look at that. You cannot just ignore that, all right? And then apart from the illegal drugs, I've heard of some of our schools, including special schools, have a serious alcohol problem. And we continue to advertise and promote, and I see a new strategy now where, you know, people engaged in the production are using a marketing strategy to use some of the best in our society, all right, to give motivational speeches, but they are the ones supporting the very thing that undermines the ethos and the character of young people being used to motivate. So there's a conflicting image there that's taking place, and there's confusion being developed in the mind. You know, a lot of young people tell me, Pastor, how we could advertise some drugs as legal, they're destroying the very fabric of the society, and then talk about other drugs illegal are doing the same thing. There's a contradiction in terms that the developed world has not yet come to terms with, and we want to follow the developed world with all their nonsense and destruction of the basic unit of the family. And that's what SOS is all about, and I'm inviting all of us to come out to the Savannah tonight, you know. I mean, it's step by step, and by the way, I think what has happened to us psychologically, in our prefrontal cortical space, is that we want sudden change, and we want change all at once, but change has got to be incremental in the society, each one doing what he can, otherwise you'll be so frustrated and depressed, you might even become suicidal. So we have to give support to those who are making a difference. Of police officers like Officer Shabari, they need more support. And the others with the youth clubs. I'm saying that represents a tremendous intervention. The Laventille Foundation at Church Street, Laventille, with Brian and the rest. It shows you what could happen, the Life Hope centers that are being constructed right now. That is where we have to go in the society.
Great. What are your closing comments at this
My
time?
closing comments is that Trinidad and Tobago, we must not lose hope. God is still large and in charge. Let us have prayer in the family. There's one thing I could say this morning. The family that prays together still stays together. And the family that prays and plays together stays together forever. Let us not give up hope. Let us do our best. Let us sacrifice as we never sacrificed before for the development of the nation. And government and opposition, do what you have to do. God bless.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure having you on, Pastor Clive Dutton.